Now then, you're welcome along to the Seabins Football Show. Later on, we'll check in with Nathan Murphy. But as we do every week, Pat Nevin is with us. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you as well. Are you well?
I'm very well. I hope you are too.
Fantastically so. I've had one of those really busy days today. I was kind of a wee bit late getting on to you for a number of reasons. I'd fallen into writing something, but before that I'd been doing a Radio 4 thing, so I had to get all my language correct. I had to get all my long words all run, in a row. But everyone wants to talk about what's going on in football at the moment. There's plenty of topics. There's no lack of topics. We thought there would be a lack of topics. Yeah. Actually, there's not. Every single time anything different happens, it's dissected.
Are you a Radio 4 listener?
Well, obviously. It's my go-to radio station. Bit 6 music as well. Massive into podcasts, like a lot of people, particularly off the ball. But lots of science programs and things like that. I mean, it's one of the joys of life at the moment that if you're driving somewhere or going anywhere, listening to podcasts is brilliant. You just go online and find what your interest is and get an expert and learn. It's brilliant.
It's true. So you said one of the reasons you were slightly late getting to us is you were writing a piece and you did that great thing, which is you lost yourself in the task at hand, which is always a good sign. So the plan was to do 1,000 words of a chapter on homophobia in football, and it morphed.
Yeah, that was about 3 years ago. So anyway, 4,000 words later, I was battering away and then I forgot that you were calling. And it's such an interesting area, and it always was such an interesting area. It's such a developing area as well. In my early days when I came down, I kind of looked different. I looked unusual. I looked not like the other players, and I was a bit punky. I wasn't averse to wearing a beret, So I got a bit of stick for being gay. People used to say it. Now, I happen not to be gay. But what surprised everybody at the time was, if you're gay, I'd say, well, actually, no. And they went, well, you don't seem offended. And I said, well, what, should I be? Mm-hmm. I don't actually see it as an offensive slur. And it really confused people at the time, football fans particularly. I remember playing against West Ham. I mean, they gave me that kind of stuff all the time. And more often than not, I never was offended by it. I'd sometimes turn around and give them a wee wink or blow them a kiss. It seemed to annoy them a wee bit more, but most can take the banter. But it was such a big thing that, if you were different, that's what you got. Now you get that for fans, you get that from some other players. Now I got it quite a bit because I was unusual and a different interest, but I didn't care. Problem was other people had bigger problems than me, like the young acolyte coming behind me was Graham Lasso.
Yeah.
It was kind of harder for Graham because he got it worse than me because he had the other interests as well, and he was an England player and football was getting bigger and bigger when he was in the limelight. So when it was aimed at him, it seemed to upset him. And I used to talk to Graham quite a lot about it and say, Graham, just laugh about it, mate. It shouldn't be a slur. But he made a very good point at times saying, in actual fact, but that's fair enough, but you didn't have it as long as I've had it, and you didn't have it as high profile and constant as I had it. And it's fair enough. It's okay. I mean, I'm kind of comfortable with myself, and I kind of come from a rough East End of Glasgow background, so kind of sticks and stones, guys. It's not going to get me,
I never realised that you had suffered with it. I knew Lasso had, and it was very high profile. And I remember as a teenager reading his book, which he wrote himself, by the way. It was a departure at the time. And it really haunted him. It was really difficult for him. And he was conscious as well of not wanting to come out too strongly and say, I'm not gay. I mean, you don't want to come out and imply that there's anything wrong with being gay, but he definitely felt it. And I do remember the passage where he describes the embarrassment when Robbie Fowler turned around and pointed to his backside and the whole ground erupted, and you just feel like you withdraw into yourself and horrible, and a huge effect on him. I never realised you had got anything in that vicinity.
Yeah, but it was kind of common, I think.
Was it?
A lot of people got it. I mean, if you look back at 60s, 70s, 80s, it was a different country. I mean, it was a different world. The past is a different country. And there was casual racism, there was casual sexism, there was casual homophobia, and it was around all the time. Now, I come from a quite enlightened background where we just didn't accept it or laughed at it or thought, well, you're just being ignorant. So when you come with that utter confidence, it's fine.
Yeah.
But I mean, you said a word there, and I know you didn't mean it. I'm not digging you up, but you said you suffered from it as well. I didn't suffer.
Okay, you didn't suffer, but Graham Lasso suffered from it for sure. It is a form of abuse. I mean, it's interesting you classify it as banter. I mean, we certainly wouldn't now, would we?
I wouldn't classify it as banter. I would say they think it's banter when they say it. I don't think it is. I never thought it was, but that's what they thought it was. On the other hand, I didn't take it as abusive, or I didn't take it, in any way other than I would take it straight on and say, "Oh, interesting, you thought that, but no, I'm not actually."
Yeah.
And then smile, and they go, "Where'd you go from there?" And if you can intellectually sort of just stare in someone's eyes and say that, now you'll get the odd meathead who comes up with, just anger and abuse and, vocabulary that's not the nicest. You don't care about the enemy, do you? I don't. Some
people do. Some people do,
I don't. And maybe that's the confidence I had. And to be honest, it's interesting you talk about that, because I was writing about that there, trying to understand it's okay for me. The thing is, it was okay for me. I didn't care. I mean, my girlfriend was quite surprised about it most of the time. She would go, "Do you think you're gay?" And I went, "Yeah, I do. I think it might be the berry." And she would just laugh, and so would I laugh. And maybe, others, maybe, I'm not saying Graham had it, but maybe he was looking for a girlfriend at the time and thinking, "I won't get one because everyone says I'm gay."
Yeah.
And if everyone thinks it, and an entire stadium thinks it, maybe the world thinks it, and it can be, it could understandably affect people. But I think what was more interesting actually writing about was actually, for me, how you would react now within the game, or how it would have been taken then. Now, in actual fact, I think it's different from how people see it, because it's like, if you go in a football, or even in factory, in your work or whatever, people will look for your weakness and give you abuse. Yeah, whatever it is, right? So I've had, baldy, big head, big nose, tight, skinny wee guy, you name it. Jewish. I'm not Jewish, but I get that. Used to get that. All those things, none affected me whatsoever. So I know it's just an effect, and they were just trying to get it. But there's specific things about the kind of homophobic stuff, because that means they can't come out. And I've always said, the moment a player comes out, and it's a high-profile player, it'll be actually fine. Within the game, it'll be okay. And it seems an odd dichotomy to explain that there are one or two homophobic and very homophobic players in the football teams, but there is in society anyway. The vast majority, if you're a good enough player, that'll be good enough. I'm really convinced of that.
Yeah, certain practicality will kick in. Though we had Damien Delaney on a while back, and he was saying he wasn't so sure that there would be players from around the world, different religious beliefs, who would be very uncomfortable with it in a dressing room, and would have said it openly enough in a dressing room. Now, he also said the majority in the dressing room told that player to shut up,
exactly,
be quiet. So ultimately, a dressing room might find a way. I guess
I'm comfortable with you. I'm really, really quite comfortable. But that's easy for me to say, because I wouldn't have to go through it. The guy who's going to be the first guy who comes out and have to go through it, it's easy for me to say, but he's no longer a footballer. He's now a cause celeb. He's now only a gay footballer.
Well, he's defined by it, and that's the problem. And who wants to be defined by it ahead of their football? Because that is the price you will pay, in effect. You are the gay footballer.
Exactly. And again, so that you can tell, that's why I got lost in writing this stuff, because you start peeling it away, and as soon as you start peeling it away, it's not as simplistic as people think it is, and it certainly wasn't as simplistic as I made it for myself. I just tore it, shredded it, and went, deal with it, guys. I happen to be straight. If you think I'm gay, I don't care. It is of no effect to me whatsoever. However, it's actually easy for me. It's much harder for other people. And I was trying to explain why, and the reasons why, and what it would be like to walk in, and also other things around it. Like, I know one or two players that were a bit effete, really, really quite effete. They weren't gay, but all those things all sort of come back in, and we're all fed into each other. And of course, there are the ones that were clearly homophobic, and I knew, and one or two of them, I can remember once, a nightclub, I didn't go to clubs, but my girlfriend and I, now wife, we were at this nightclub with the Chelsea players, and we were chatting, and I met clang, name drop, Elton John. And Elton John was chatting away. Now, Elton wants to talk to me about football, and I want to talk to him about music, obviously, because my interest. And we ended up having this great conversation, and Annabelle and I were chatting to him for ages. And then one of the lads came back, walked by and shouted, "Hey lads, watch your arses, Elton's around." And it was this most horrible, horrible moment. And Elton looked devastated, and he had a good line back.
Sorry, Elton, he said this in front of Elton John?
Yes, so that everyone could hear. Exactly. I mean, and Elton looked, and Elton said something, I heard that ducky or something like that, to play it up. But he was clearly upset.
Yeah.
And I was furious. And I had a word with the player, but I left. I no time. I didn't want to go the night out with them. But that was it. I was going home. Because if I don't hang about with people that do that sort of thing, say that sort of thing. And, you know, I remember thinking at the time, I didn't actually think he was one of them. But he thought that was funny. He thought that was banter. And it kind of happened. So there's all those things. And Elton wants to be part of football. And at that time, he was kind of, the people that idiots like that were pushing him away from it. Now, thankfully, we've kind of moved on. And to be fair, when I mentioned it to one or two of the lads that night, they were all furious with that player as well. So
yes.
That's the point. We hear the loud voices, like many things in life. Don't listen to all the loud voices. Listen to everyone. And then you get a better view of what society's like.
Mm. So I'm sure you tease all this out in your article. The situation then is twofold. You have the current player right now who is maybe toing and froing, maybe open in their life and to plenty of their teammates or some of their teammates, but he's hesitant over the next step and having to deal with the first, reveal. I mean, it's even crazy to talk in these terms compared to any other office or.
When you think about sport, lots of other sports have been there, gone there. Yeah. Done that and moved on.
Yes, moved on very quickly. The second question, which is just as interesting, and you referenced it there in part. So if we look at society and the percentage of people who are not heterosexual, and if you apply that to sport, then there's any number in terms of, say, the Premier League of gay players. And yet that actually might be much smaller than it is in society, because we can only imagine the numbers who might have loved the game and playing football and who very, very, very early on realised this is not the environment for me. The story you just told, imagine there was a gay player as a teammate. He's certainly not coming out to that room. So I wonder, is football providing a more inclusive atmosphere for gay players who are attracted to the game but not so attracted to everything else that might go with it?
It's a brilliant question. That's why I'm writing. And that's why I get a chance to ever talk about it. Is because, look, this is going to be a wee bit more welcoming than you think. I really do. You don't know it yet, and it takes the first one, but it's going to be more welcoming. Now, I can tell you, of all the players I played with through an entire career, 19-year career, played with a lot of players. I know of one who was gay. Now, I'm not saying I'm sure there was more than one who was gay.
Yeah.
But I found out many years later that one guy, and I didn't know. He hadn't come out. Currently, he is out now with his friends, and that's absolutely fine. It was great. But what really got me, and it was a brilliant moment, it happened a year ago. I was sitting beside 3 teammates who had been teammate of this guy. And somebody else said, "Do you know so-and-so's?" I won't out him because he's not asked to be outed. So they said, "Do you know so-and-so is gay?" And he's out with his friends. And these 3 teammates from that time, remember, 80s, turned around and said, "Oh, really? Oh, it's a shame he didn't tell us. It'd have been okay."
Mm.
And the other one went, "Yeah, it must have been really hard for him. He said he lived with his mum. Maybe that's why." That's the level. There's nothing more other than, I wish he could have told us. And I kind of look at it and think, if only the push could come from somewhere. And it's going to take a big character, a big personality that's going to walk in and do it. Although I think you're heading towards another interesting area of this. This is why I try to squeeze into 4,000 words. The other area is, are there really a mirrored amount of gay people playing football at the top level than there is gay people in society? I'm not sure. Not absolutely convinced about that, to be honest. I think it's going to be much smaller.
Yeah. Where are we going to read this article, and when's it coming out?
I'm not going to read the article because it's going to be in my book. I decided to. I kind of finished it ages ago, but the publishers keep on coming back. could you do something about that? Could you do something about that? We're getting our money's worth, these people. But to be honest, it's really interesting talking about, you know, areas that you think, have they been covered in any real depth? Have they been considered, you know? And it's kind of, when I get down to the last line, I know I need to write something about, as soon as I talk about it, I know some people say, he's gay then. Or if I write about it in the book, they'll go, oh, he's got a whole chapter on homophobia. He must be gay then. And I go, so?
Yeah.
No, but I don't care. And that was the thing that, you know, publishers and people say, are you not worried about that? And I would say, no.
I would think the other thing, and so I'm kind of thinking as I'm going here, because I have a list of, I was going to start talking to you about the Bundesliga. So that was where my head was at for the previous hour. The other thing which would strike me if I was a 22, 23-year-old that I would be fearful of, as well as being described as the gay footballer more than I might like, is also the abuse from the crowd.
And online.
And online, sure, yeah. And how that's treated is something the game will have to have a think about at various levels. For instance, as you said, football crowds pick out whatever weakness it is, be it big nose or you're ginger. It's just used as a way of getting at the opposition players. That is the culture. Now, there is a line we have drawn, and so racist abuse is way beyond that line. So where will homophobia fall in that line? How seriously will it be taken? Will we have stadium announcers saying, unless the homophobic abuse stops, if it was to happen, the game will stop, as we do with racism? And finding that line, that's something the game will have to, you would be ready for, and you would hope are talking about now. How do we treat this in the stands?
Piece of cake, right beside racism. Dead easy. You just stick it right beside it. It's fine. There's just no acceptance because, you know, and I feel, again, quite comfortable because although it took us years to get, you know, to get all those thousands of people to understand, hey, wait a minute, we don't do this here. And the vast majority, I know there's still some do it, the vast majority don't. Some of them might think it, but they don't. You just make it clear, this doesn't happen here. And if you make it clear right at the start, and I think it has been, well, I know it's been made clear. Some of us, you can go back to exactly 20 years ago when we wrote a statement when I took over at Motherwell of what our club was about. And that was on the statement 20 years ago. We don't care about your race, colour, sexuality, the whole world, and we will not allow that at our football club. Now, we were probably the first club to put that in our statement and say, this is what we think, this is the ethos, and it's up everywhere, and it's in the programme every week, and this is what we think, and it's on the website. But everyone would do it now. Every club would do it now, and they would do it at a drop of a hat. So, again, I don't want to make it sound as if it's easy. It's not easy, but doable. Yes. And can you imagine one thing? Can you imagine someone, you know I'm not the biggest fan as a football player as David Beckham. I thought he was okay. He was a good player, right? Bex, here's your time, mate. Someone like Beckham would be fabulous to say, you know, there's a gay player here. I'm behind him 100%. I'm going to stick by him. I'm going to support him as much as possible. And I think Beckham would do that. I think he's just the right kind of guy to do that. He's the right type of role model, and he's a strength of personality in the world stage and generally loved in his country. He would be nailed on the right kind of guy to do that. And by the way, you would be holding people back like Lineker and all that. They'd be desperate to get involved and say, we're not accepting any homophobia. Sure. So that's why I think it wouldn't be sort of an entities like me to be standing up at that point.
Yeah, no, I would think in the main you're right. So let's park that for a moment. When's this book of yours out?
Yeah, good point. If they'd just let me finish it, it would possibly be November, I think. It's kind of, I could get it out as soon as possible, but you wouldn't want it out now anyway, because nobody's going to bookshops.
Book tour isn't so good.
Not so good. And also, you get these weird things. I mean, the listeners might be interested, because I don't really know about these things. So, you know, you write it, and I wrote it in an unusual way. I just wrote it, and then said to the publisher, do you want that? It's kind of a weird way to do it. They usually come to you first.
Yes. I
said, do you want that? And they went, yeah, okay. And then they say, right, we might be able to get that out in about 2 years. What? I've written it now. But when you start talking to them about, you know, the legal it, they have to check the edits, they have to check that everything's absolutely correct about it. They then have to see what's the right time in marketing, and all that, and then you're in a machine at that point in time. So I'm trying to ignore that machine and just think, right, okay, you let that go on with it. I'll just do the writing stuff, you know.
So it's not an autobiography. It's a concepts, thoughts on the game, that kind of a thing.
It's certainly hung around the skeleton of an autobiography.
Okay.
I'd say that. It's hung around the skeleton of it. It's just I'll be honest with you, I can whisper it to you. That was just to get the stories out. Because people will be interested in autobiography and what you've gone through. So it's there. But the reason for doing it is to get a point across or a story across. And if I want anything about this, and I know I'm talking about a very serious subject here, but see, at the end of this, and I write this, see if it's no funny, I'm going to throw it into the river. I don't want to see it. I want it to be funny. That's when I did, was a much more po-faced kind of thing. So hopefully a bit of humour in it as well. So when it does come out, eventually, you can tell me if it makes you laugh.
Good. Well, you can send us a copy for sure. So Bundesliga, did you bother to watch any? Were you enthused or curious bystander? What did you watch any games in full?
Yeah, that's the last part of your question's a cracker. In full. To be fair, that is the thing, isn't it? And many people, you know, tuned into it, and then after 10 minutes you're thinking, yeah, there's not a lot of excitement here. There's a game of football. The technical side of it's is okay, but you know, where's the oomph? You know, because there's no fans there, etc. I have to, like many people, I don't actually watch that many games just purely for a game of football. I have to have some interest, whether it's a team I like, somebody I know, or a brilliant player, or a technical interest. Right? There has to be something that gets me. So it takes 10 or 15 minutes. And if nothing special is hitting me, I'm off. I'm just ashamed, but I'm off. The one that caught me is the one I thought would catch me was the Union Berlin versus Bayern Munich. And I just wanted to see. I like Bayern Munich a lot. I'd actually been talking to the guy Nevin from Union Berlin the week before anyway. He was talking very interesting points about what he thought about coming out of the lockdown, and he wasn't convinced about it. Actually, he probably was less convinced about it because he gave away a penalty, didn't he? But there need to be an interest in there, and I found enough interest in that one. I clicked in and out of the other games, but that was the one that got me because I just happened to quite like Bayern Munich. I know it's not trendy. I know it's not skilled. I know everyone's supposed to say, you know, some other really trendy like Dortmund. You're supposed to say Dortmund, or you're supposed to say one of the other trendier teams in Bundesliga too. But I like Bayern Munich. Number of reasons. They actually play brilliant football at the moment. Generally, they're a really good footballing team. And the left back's one of my favourite players playing football.
Oh, yeah. Remind me of his name. He burst on the scene in the Champions League a couple of weeks back. He had the most unbelievable game. Yeah,
I'd gone to see him a while back before that as well, Alphonso Johnson.
Yeah.
And what a player. I mean, wow, just 19. You know, when's the last time you went to see a left back? If I'm going to that game, I want to see a left back. You know, it just kind of doesn't happen very often unless you want to see somebody maiming someone else. But he's a great player.
And the most ridiculous story as well, from refugee camp to Canada to now superstar in Europe.
Yeah, I mean, you can't write that stuff. It's absolutely brilliant. And it's not because of the journey. It's because of the player for me. But the journey's dead interesting as well. He used to be a winger and they moved him back to fullback, and he's amazing. Really, really good player. So you stick that on top of the fact there's another thing I've always loved about Bayern, or have done for 8 years and 1 day. Right? There's a very specific number for you. They lost the Champions League final at their own ground, and they were so giving about it. They were the better team against Chelsea that day. But there was no rioting, there was no anger, there was no fury. There was well done, well done. It must be a great thing for you. And it was like, nobody reacts like that. It was just so brilliantly German, in the modern German way.
Yeah.
They were so kind, they were so giving, they were so understanding, and happy for the opposition. I've never known a group of people like that, particularly football fans. So ever since then, I've had a wee thing about Bayern. I really liked them. But the football was okay. I don't know what you thought. I think the football was good. Maybe it wasn't quite the intensity. But what I tried to figure out, and I'm sure you watched some of it as well.
Do you know what? I didn't really.
Well,
I don't have BT Sport, and I didn't feel the great need to go looking for it. I looked at a clip or two on YouTube, and it was as I expected. I mean, we've seen games behind closed doors before, so I just I wasn't frothing at the mouth to see a football game so desperately that I was going to watch a mid-table German game.
It's a bit of work for me as well, because I've got a show on the BBC World Service every Thursday, so I know we'll be talking about German football this week, so I better know what I'm talking about. Yeah. So there's a kind of that as well, but it's not the hardest work in the world. But what I was trying more than anything else, and I've not been able to find the stats to back up, but I'm going to find them before Thursday. It didn't look as intense to me. The pace didn't look as high to me. But I have no idea whether that's because there was no fans and it just looked different, or whether it was a wee bit slower. I don't know. But I think it looks a wee bit slower. I don't think they're quite there yet. And come up with a bunch of stats and say, no, they all.
Sorry, we lost you there briefly. You went. I just lost you when you said, I don't think they're quite there yet from a fitness point of view.
I don't think they're quite there yet. It doesn't look quite as intense. It really just doesn't. But I'm going to check the figures first.
Well, interestingly, and you can check this out as well, and it's probably too small a sample size, but if you're going on Thursday night, a few of the players, Raphael Honigstein wrote about it in The Athletic, a few people made the observation that players were far less inclined to get involved with the referee. There was no playing to the gallery. So with a bad decision, they were less in the referee's face and, oh, look how much I care, kiss the badge, have a go at the referee. So actually that seemed to be smoother as well. And there were fewer dives, somebody said as well. But I mean, I don't quite know if you can measure that over the space of one game. But apparently there was, I guess, a less heated atmosphere and therefore less gnawing at the referee.
I actually think that's a brilliant point. And I'd see the less dives and a slightly different attitude towards the game. It is because, to some extent, it feels exactly like a training game. There's no getting around it. It feels like a training game, because that's what they sound like when you play a training game in the stadium. They sound like that. They feel like that. There's no, so you don't dive in a training game. You generally don't do that. I don't think anyone, or very few players, would dive, because in a training game it's against your mates and they. Yeah.
It also probably feels a bit embarrassing to dive and not have the crowd at least go, yeah, look at that. That was you almost need the acknowledgement of the 50,000 around you. Whereas if it's just everyone on the pitch looking at you, you probably feel slightly ridiculous.
Absolutely. Now, to be fair, I'm really keen to see that. And remember, if the player dives and it's at home and you've got the whole ground behind you and the referee books you, 40,000 people aren't angry with you, they're angry with the referee. So there's a kind of taking the pressure off yourself if you do it in front of a crowd. But you're right. I'm intrigued to see. I'm going to watch a little bit more of it. I will not be slavishly watching every single minute of every single game that's put out there. But if I'm interested in it and there's good players playing, I'll definitely do it. But what is good is it's happening at the moment. So far, it's working. It's early days to know, because we don't know if any of the players have had the virus beforehand, or have been carrying the virus, are going to get the virus. So if a couple of players in the team get the virus, is that the end? Do they need to self-isolate the entire team? And then what happens to the league then? The confusion of that is incredible. The good thing for British football is we can watch them have all their problems. We can figure out, okay, they did that right, that wrong, that right, that wrong. Yeah. When the British team comes back. And of course, today's the day when they finally started training in small groups in England, and that's a massive job.
Yes, and there's been so much talk about that. We can pause on that.
My wife's brought me a cup of tea.
Oh, listen. Well, you're nearly done. You're nearly off the hook anyway. We'll leave Project Restart for this week, because I'm going to talk about it with Nathan Murphy in just a moment. But we should mention Celtic, our league champions. They were 13 points clear of Rangers anyway, with 8 games left. So they're at 9. They're on the precipice. Are Rangers going to spend, 1, 2, 3 billion over the summer to stop 10 happening?
And it's what you need to spend to stop Celtic. It's actually also huge, because Rangers have spent a lot. And financially, we know what's happened to Rangers a number of years ago there. Can they take that chance again? It's extraordinary, because, they can put themselves in that position. And there are big questions of, even if they were in that position before, to put another big spend in next season. Are they in it now, after what's happened now? They will spend some money because there's a new TV deal for Scottish television. But Celtic will spend the same, if not more, because they win the league. They get more money from that. They've actually been in Champions League football for years and years and years, and they've got a whole bunch of money from that. They've done more for sales. They've got more money for sales, etc. everything is in Celtic's favour to get this 10 in a row, but they will fight it, they will battle it tooth and nail. It's hard to see how Rangers can stop it, but boy, they will put whatever they can into it. What they don't want to do is bankrupt themselves in the meantime doing it. And I think that probably is the biggest danger.
Because around Christmas time, when they beat Celtic, Rangers that is, there was probably more in hope than expectation, a bit of noise about the fact that we had a real title race here and the gap was really narrowing. I mean, are we actually looking at Celtic going on to do 11, 12, 13? Is that the most likely outcome here?
If you've asked me 5-6 years ago, I'd have said, yes, stick on. Yeah, absolute certainty. Can't see any way around it because Rangers were so far behind. The Rangers have got closer. I was at that game you were talking about around about the new year there.
Yeah.
The Rangers really had lifted themselves and they've done really well. But they have fallen away and they haven't got the strength and depth. And quite clearly, I don't think they would have caught Celtic this season had all the games been played. But they are a lot closer than they were. But it's still a gap. The Celtic fans will always show these big banners saying mind the gap. And there is, without a doubt, a gap. And it's now a 9-year one. And 10 years would be incredible because when I was growing up, Celtic were winning their 9. And when I was come back and playing for a few years in Scotland, Rangers were winning their 9.
Mm.
And it's got this magical thing of this 10 in a row that you would, can you just imagine how long you've got, the bragging rights over that? It's maybe forever. It's a possibility forever. So for Celtic fans, it's a massive, massive thing. It's good winning the league this year, but it's only a prelude.
Yes, it's all a prelude. You have been impressed as we say goodbye. You have been impressed with Steven Gerrard, the manager, though.
Yeah, I mean, to get them that close, that quickly, I look at them player for player, and I'm not as good as Celtic and haven't been, and they were starting from such a low base. Yes, they spent a decent amount of money, a good amount of money, but coming from that far behind, it's like there's 4 laps to go and you're a lap behind when he took over the job. He'd done well to get up there on the tail for a wee while, okay, so he fell away, but he'd done a great job to get that far. It's also walking into, tactically he's been pretty good as well, a lot better than I gave him credit for, because it usually takes most managers a while to learn the intricacies of changing tactics against guys that have done it for a long time. But I've just watched him walking into that mental atmosphere, what that is Glasgow and Scotland, but specifically Glasgow, the media scrum, the madness of it all. It's so easy to trip. You will trip every 2 minutes because people are standing there with big hooks trying to trip you every time you walk out and every time you speak. I'm amazed at how few times he has actually fallen over. He's actually done incredibly well. Part of it might have at the start been the fact that he was given a bit of respect, and think it's Steven Gerrard. But that doesn't last forever. And with the Celtic fans, it won't last forever. So there's been a lot of people having a go, and he hasn't tripped that very often. I'm deliberately saying tripped, not slip. Because if I say that, Liverpool fans will think I'm having a go at Stevie Gerrard.
Yes, well. Listen, that was all great. That was fascinating. A final thought for your chapter, not your article. Because even when we talk about homophobia in football and players having to come out, even that language increasingly feels so antiquated. I'm uncomfortable even saying it. The interesting point will be how quickly we get to the point where somebody, comes out, but then can we, because I didn't come out as a heterosexual. We get to a point where you don't come out, you just are, and there's no need to come out. It's not even an issue. That's almost stage 2.
Well, do you know what? It's probably the biggest reason why I want to talk about it, because, LGBTQ rights and things like that have come a long, long way, and there's gay pride marches and all that in most cities, and people will cheer along and laugh. And I remember somebody saying, a friend of mine knew, as our chap can say, I'm coming out, I'm gay, I've never told you. And he went, yeah, but I've got to make my tea. Like, who cares? It's a big deal for you, but I'll make my tea.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where, to some degree, we want to be. If it becomes normal in football, it's normalizing society. And that's it. The game's over. We can all laugh and smell and bin that one. And the lovely thing is, have a look at women's football.
Yeah.
Does anyone know? Does anyone care?
No.
It's got a much larger number of gay players. I happen to know, because I happen to know quite a few of them.
Yeah.
Nobody cares.
Oh, it's total non-issue. Yeah. It's the exemplar, really.
That's why I want the male game to get there.
Yeah.
And I think when we get there, it'll be a kind of, I think it'll be a 2-month wonder, and it'll be, I forget about that. Let's go.
Yeah, we hope to agree. Pat, pleasure. Let's talk next week.
Look forward to it. See you soon.